Okay, delighted to welcome everybody to one of our monthly programs here at the Star Library for the Rhinebeck Historical Society. And our speaker this evening is Bill Jeffway. Bill is in addition to serving in Milan as the town historian in that neck of the woods and helping out enormously at Historic Red Hook and down here at the Rhinebeck Historical Society. Some of our ability to put our clutches on you, Bill, have been interfered with by the fact that others have found out what skills he has, most notably the Dutchess County Historical Society, and they've decided to make you their executive director, and I can't understand why, but I guess we will find out why this evening, and Bill is going to take us on a tour of local history.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, the moment we have all been waiting for. See, we did all that to build anticipation. So now I'm sure there's plenty. But it's funny, when I first spoke to Michael and David some time ago about a topic, Brad Kendall, the county clerk, had just let me in his office to photograph what, I may have had the dimensions wrong before, I apologize. It's a 9-foot wide map and it's 2 feet tall. But he had just let me photograph that, and I said, well, I'll talk about the map. And then, of course, I started to think about it, and I thought, well, oh my goodness, what else? There must be something beside the map. So I added a little bit more than just the map, and I've put it in some context. And the title of the talk was about kind of listening to history, and I wanted to get that out of the way first because the map is not really going to talk. But I just personally believe that if we all slow down and listen, that history has something to tell us and teach us. So that's what I mean about when I say history speaks or historical objects speak. And we talked about other historians, and one of the things I will end up talking about is how we can use things online to preserve the work of other historians who's come before us and build on it so that it becomes kind of a collective view instead of kind of isolated and lost, and make it more accessible. So I gotta get that's the listening part. The more I got into it, I was on Row Road, which is one of the beautiful old roads that is shown in the map, and there were these beautiful tire tracks with hoof marks, and I suddenly thought, oh, well, maybe that's what I could talk about. This idea that the shift from horses to horsepower have caused certain dynamics, and what are some of the drivers of change behind them? And that's kind of human behavior and economic things, and those don't necessarily change so much, but the horse to horsepower does. So the map was, oh, I'm sorry. Where am I? I'm going to talk about it talk about 3 stages then. There's the first is the map itself. It was done in 1802 as part of the Salisbury, we call it the Salisbury Turnpike now, but it was originally the Ulster and Delaware Turnpike, meant to connect Salisbury, Connecticut with the Susquehanna River, which would then drain down into Maryland. So you would be able to get the iron ore from Salisbury quite some distance. Then in the middle section, there was this interesting period in the teens and 20s where the state started to upgrade roads because we started to have the automobile, but they were not as demanding as the automobiles of the 40s, 50s, and 60s when a kind of new kind of road came in. So I'm going to put the 1802 Turnpike map in the context of these 3 periods. The map itself, if you go to the Dutchess County website, the historian and the county clerk have an ancient documents record, which is amazing. But if you don't pay a fee, there's the map from left to right up there, but it says something like, you haven't paid, you can't download this. So, you don't get a very good view of it, but there's Brad, he was very nice. But he, as I said, let me get in there, 9 feet wide. He was letting it set on the table because he's sending it into conservation, potentially to show at our Milan Bicentennial next year, we'll see. But the photography, the map itself, especially that it was so wide, was really amazing. The M of the map, though, you can see has a whack of a Scotch tape on it. But the little drawings, like that pond, is what we now call Round Lake. And Widow Stewart is at the, she was a row. She lived at the corner of what is now Mile and Hill Road. So even though it was very wide and long, it had this most extraordinary and beautiful detail. And I've put some of these, many of these photographs online. That's the little card I was handing out after. But if we take ourselves back to 1802, we remember that Rhinebeck, of course, included what is now Red Hook, and Milan, Pine Plains, and Northeast were still just one town of Northeast. So if we're going to talk about the map, just a reminder that we had Rhinebeck along the river, including what is now Red Hook. By the way, what they called Red Hook, we now call Tivoli. So just to put that in perspective. But everything was driven by commerce, right? It was about how do we get things to and from the river. And in that particular geography, there were access points at what we now call Tivoli, at what we call Barrytown, at Clifton Point, or sometimes called Schultz's Point, and then at Rhinecliff, but the not the village, but is it Long Dock that is at
Yes.
the yeah.
Slate dock.
So those 4 access points were really important, and there were ferries at Rhinebeck from the mid-18th century through to when they started getting powered by horses paddling on them. I would love to see that in action. And then, of course, steam, and then really right into the 50s. So over 200 years worth of ferries right at Rhinecliff. So that was to the west. To the east, all eyes were on Salisbury, Connecticut, and not just that particular town, but the northwestern part of Connecticut had an enormous amount of high-quality iron ore. So it wasn't just the volume of it, it was the quality of it. And of course, this was very important, especially as we got more toward the Revolutionary War. So there were great economic interest in being able to transport it to the river. And at the very top, you can see Ancram Ironworks. That was kind of a competing thing. That was within the Livingston Manor, and that was his. He kind of was Livingston was kind of making an effort to keep everything kind of north and up there. And there were some people now in Rhinebeck who were trying to pull things a little bit south. So there was a little bit of economic dynamism pulling things in different directions. And specifically, when you look at 1802, in terms of who actually incorporated the Ulster and Delaware Turnpike, Philip Ten Eck of New York City, Tremper and Pine of Kingston and Walton, so the west side. The person with the most direct interest in Rhinebeck with this turnpike was Asa Potter, right? He was a well-known name here, I think a postmaster, right, and an owner of the hotel that is now the Beekman Arms, is that right? So there are people who know more about this than I do here, so I will have to ask occasionally. So I'm focusing a little bit more on Asa Potter and his eye on all that ore, and how do we get that traffic to go by my hotel? And if you're Asa Potter in Rhinebeck and you're looking east, there's a bit of a problem because Round Lake, I'm going to use contemporary names, but what we now call Round Lake Road tends to head east and south, and then what we now call Turkey Hill Road tends to go into Livingston Land, and then what we now call 199, it's unrecognizable now what the roads used to be, what used to look like. The main roads were 199 up Academy and over Ferris, if you know that, and then down Row Road into what is Cold Spring Road. The roads today are so different from what they were then because they've been, well, as you'll see, reorganized for certain economic purposes. But as you can see, if you want to get from either direction, there's not a nice straight line. So what they thought they would do is draw a nice straight line, right? So this is the path, the proposed path of the Salisbury Turnpike. It happens to spur things like the Lafayette House in Lafayetteville. It's all about being a straight line. There is that little jig there because there are two very distinct mountains. If you drive that road today, you know, once you get past Lafayetteville, you take a sharp left and you go due north. The mountains are still there as they were in 1802. So maybe a good, first good picture of the whole map. Unfortunately, that portion of northeast, right at the Connecticut border, is lost. But the map is otherwise in very good shape. So I was going to start at the river and then just go by 2-mile segments just into Milan and see what we had. So this is a close-up of, well, I guess maybe this is a 1-mile segment. So this is the very far left of the map, starting at Long Dock. And I couldn't help but go this morning and photograph these 2 beautiful houses, right? And again, there are people here know more than I do about them, but the 2 beautiful stone houses that I assume are the ones reflected on the map here. But what strikes me is the incredible straightness of that road, which remains, how many hundred years later are we? We're about 200 and something years later. So I just put that up with the contemporary one, and you can see the Rhinebeck Kill there on the right, in the same place. The map's got these little mileage markers. That's the number of miles from Salisbury. Okay, downtown Rhinebeck. So between 25 and 24 miles, you can see the indication of the hotel in the southwest corner, and a lot of other familiar names. One of the challenges they had is that Asa Potter died 3 years later in 1805. So he didn't live much longer after the beginning of this enterprise with the Turnpike. And then if we go to the next section, this is an important section because you go from the eastern edge of Rhinebeck Flats to the Schuyler residence, Philip I. Schuyler. He's important because he actually becomes the executor of Asa Potter's will after. So they obviously were close, and it does make sense that that Philip Schuyler would have had an interest in having the Turnpike go past there as well. That's also the area that you'll see on some maps where Freeborn Gerritsen first had his home and church before he moved to the river. Then it starts to get interesting because we have these dotted lines actually kind of understate what's there. The dotted line to the north is where we would go north on 308 or right, heading toward Milan into the Salisbury Turnpike. And it actually gets quite mountainous there. And there's the pond that is Round Lake. I should mention that all these numbers, and then some of them are dots, some of them are houses. There's an index to this map that mentions every person's name and every type of tree. It's a walnut that's 6 feet tall, you know. It's unbelievable. In addition to the miles being posted are these indices of where the edges of the road are relative to trees and houses. So it's just loaded with a lot of information. And then, now I've stepped back and pulled back because we're looking at, on the far left, that area where 308 heads north to Rock City, and where the Turnpike goes straight through what they called Meade Hill. And the Meade family was an early family and included Revolutionary War veterans. They were a very well-established family there. And the little cross that you see on the far right of the Turnpike at the bottom is what we call Case's Corner, maybe best known for Dr. Herrick's little doctor's office, which is still there. So this is a view from the intersection of 308 and what becomes the Salisbury Turnpike. And to the right, Case's Corner, with this incredible, I hadn't realized till I started getting into this just how big that mountain is through, between Case's Corner and where 308 hits the Salisbury Turnpike. People who live there would know, but I didn't realize. So I just took this picture recently about Rock City. I mean, if you slow down enough, there are extraordinary streams and rivers, and we forget how important these rivers and streams were, and especially with the rain lately, there have been some beautiful opportunities to take pictures of flowing water, and Rock City has a pretty good thing going there, and it supported a number of mills. I just put this illustration in because it's a USGS map to show you that there really is a significant hill there. And that becomes important because as the road evolves, there's great competition. In the early 1800s, I put up Mr. Livington's picture because he was pushing the Ancram Turnpike to the north. We had the Duchess Turnpike to the south. We had the, I can't even pronounce it, but there was a Woodstock Turnpike. You get the idea. There was a massive run on turnpikes. Everybody was doing turnpikes. And there's our humble little Salisbury Turnpike going along. But it came very competitive very quickly. And by 1808, the Ulster and Delaware Railroad was, had a notice in the paper that after a call of $2, meaning they had been promising all this, all the money you'd make from these shares. Well, it was quite the opposite. You needed to start giving money per shares. And first it was $2, and then in 1808, they ordered $3 more. These are the things under, so that $5, whatever shares you had to pay $5 more or you forfeited them all. They were really in trouble. Well, by 1816, they had really figured it all out because I found this slightly amusing. But in 1816, there was a commentary in, of course, a Kingston newspaper, which said that this turnpike has been extended eastward from Kingston across the Hudson to Salisbury, in other words, us, Dutchess County. It's been extended through Dutchess County, but for the error in doing that, but for the error in the law that sanctioned that route and has favored the views of speculators, we would by this time have the road in complete repair between Kingston and Jericho. So they were obviously way behind on the west side, and they were blaming the east side. That's the kind of thing, I guess, that still goes on. Few turnpikes have more disappointed the hopes of all its patrons. So I'm afraid that didn't pan out quite the way everyone was hoping they would. And the reason I illustrated that, the degree of that mountain, was simply that as we moved into the next phase of automobiles, and this, by the way, is a picture of the Myers family in Lafayetteville. They're obviously very proud of their car. The decision was made to not focus so much on getting these automobiles over the hill on the old Salisbury Turnpike Road, and instead would go back, whatever's old is new, they would go back to what was called on the Turnpike Road the old road being to the north. So they were going to revisit the old road and avoid that hill, because these cars were not everything they were meant to be. Obviously, when you got a new car, you were quite proud of it. You had a nice family photograph out front with all the relatives. By 1906, 2 new roads were voted, and they were the largest state highways ever built in Dutchess County. There was this period of time we were spelling Dutchess without a T. It didn't last long, but it did happen. Anyway, imagine the largest state highways ever built, and that involves the distance between Rock City and Lafayetteville. So that gives you a sense of the scale. The larger map at the bottom I got off the Dutchess County website. Again, they have all these plans from the roads of all these different periods on their website. And you can see that the road to be improved is between Rock City and Lafayetteville. And it was really right after that. That seems to have gone ahead all right. What do we do next? This is another classic thing, because there was a big debate about what to do next. It went so well between Rock City and Lafayetteville. What do we do next? Well, the Board of Supervisors, you'll recall, right, we didn't have the charter government we have now. We had a Board of Supervisors made up of the heads of the towns. They suggested a certain order, but you'll never guess what happened. In the bottom in red it says, "It will be recalled that the Poughkeepsie Automobile Club recently sent a resolution to the Commissioner of Roads asking the road from Red Hook to Rock City be done first." And they had this big fight between the government and this Poughkeepsie Automobile Club, who obviously has a lot of power. Anyway, the road between Rhinebeck and Rock City that year lost out. So there were all these battles going on, like which section do we get to do next, and who gets it and who doesn't. Anyway, they called that Route 41 in those days. And Route 41 ran from downtown Barrytown on the river to downtown Millerton. And it was Route 41 until the renaming of all the roads in the 1930s, and that became, that's the section that became 199. But I found it kind of interesting, everyone was fighting over what to do with these roads. But it was a very fragile time, and by that I mean, in 1914, these are all the Poughkeepsie paper. Guess what? Automobile apparatuses are found to be useless in the heavy snow for the fire department. Horses and sleighs are brought back. There was a big announcement in 1917 that on Route 41, that's downtown Barrytown to Millerton, Route 41 mail carrier now drives a car. So this was the period where these little local things were beginning to be done by automobile. But even by 1920, wouldn't you know, the horse-drawn hook and ladder had to be brought back while there was a problem with some ball bearings on the tires of the fire apparatus, as they called it. So you can, and there were some great articles about, I think a police automobile went off the road. They said it took 50 men to pull it up. So they were still struggling with how these, I mean, they were great to have, but they would break down. They didn't have the kind of support services we have. And then I just thought a nice little ad for what was displayed at the Dutchess County Fair in 1919. So this was a period of experimentation with automobiles. And then one of my favorite, I'm trying to keep it local, this is Frederick P. Wilcox of the Wilcox Park. It might be his first wife, but it's definitely his mother in the back. I don't know if she doesn't like the first wife or being in the thing, the contraption of the car. But look at, she's beaming and she's just not. Anyway, that was that period. All right. Now it gets really interesting. Because we quickly leave that behind, we get past World War II. I was actually at a talk I gave recently, someone gave me a book by Henry Billings about Route 199, and I thought, who writes a book about 199? Who is this guy? So I started asking Nancy, because I was in the Rhinebeck post office, and I got the book that you guys have published on the murals, and Olin Dulles goes out of his way to say, and I want to especially thank Henry Billings, who went out of his way. Who is Henry Billings? Anyway, we will learn who he is, because this is also what I find fascinating as somebody with an advertising background. This is the marketing of the automobile age, right? And the beauty, these things are so idealized. So keep Henry in mind. I just need to recap. This is the Beekman coach that is at the New York Historical Society. And then that's a much later picture of horses. But I was just reminding us that we had horses kind of trundling along that path. Then we had automobiles who decided maybe that hill would be something we would kind of go around. And there was a question about what to do with these beautiful automobiles, because we have the old route from the Turnpike, we have the new route to downtown Barrytown. Of course, the big thing in the 40s was the creation of the Taconic State Parkway. And that raised larger questions. Again, all this beautiful, idealized stuff, the parkway was very much intended to link. Lake Taconic, I know, was an important destination that they wanted to link, but the Taconic only went up to Milan and Route 199 from 1949, and I think it didn't go past that for maybe 20 more years, not 20, 10 or 15 more years. But I just wanted to put, there are these beautiful idealized pictures of being able to, especially city people, connect with a healthier air. Big news in 1949. Kingston-Rhinecliff Bridge may be linked with Westchester County Park System. There is an alternate route being discussed. The thought behind the alternate route is to divide the expected heavy traffic on the thruway under construction. The route being considered would add a 6-line highway on the east side of the Hudson. That means Dutchess County. So they were developing a plan that would have a 6-line highway on the east of the Hudson, somewhere north of the George Washington Bridge, to pass through Dutchess, Putnam, and Westchester. So, when you go to places and they have 6-lane highways and they have nuclear power plants and they have all that stuff, and you think, God, but at one point, they were rural little farms. Well, you know, it could have happened here, I guess is my point. Thank goodness they decided that that alternate route was not the way to go, but it's amazing that they were even thinking about it. We take so much for granted that didn't happen here. The Dream Bridge over the Hudson, right? I found this really interesting. Again, very aspirational, idealized imagery about, I guess if you're clunking across on a ferry, it is kind of exciting to have a bridge. But the point they kind of left out is that the original plan for the Mid-Hudson Bridge, which by the way is again idealized in a WPA artist, that was again idealized by Maxwell House into a coffee ad. This is a coffee ad in 1947. I mean, this bridge is just so beautiful, right? But what they failed to mention, now that I work in Poughkeepsie and I can test, is this bridge, of course, was designed, it was originally designed to go right into Rhinecliff. And what I put in the top was the idealized imagery from the opening, and then the aerial views in black and white are from the, right after the bridge was built, and then the green ones are what we have today after urban renewal. So get rid of all those pesky neighborhoods, have some nice spaghetti loops. So again, the original plan was that it would go along the old Turnpike route into beautiful downtown Rhinebeck. Insert a decade of intense debate here, which I understand is a whole presentation on itself. It involves Vincent Astor having an opinion. It involves a lot of things. The Bridge Authority today has a little blurb. It's very funny. It just says, for political and other reasons, the bridge was moved 3 miles north. Okay, so we're just going to actually skip over that because that is another presentation. And look at what happened in terms of going north. Here's some beautiful maps from the Rhinebeck Historical Society that showed this really was a new way. It was a new area that they were carving out, and the photograph is from Rhinecliff looking up to where the sorry, not a suspension bridge. It's a what do you call it? They didn't have the rock foundations 3 miles north. No, it's the opposite, right? They didn't, for whatever reason, they couldn't technically do a suspension bridge. They needed to do a truss bridge. That's what they call it. So the whole thing had to be redesigned. Anyway, so I'm looking about the opening of the bridge, 3 miles north, very exciting. Books, photographs, display of photographs at the Adrian's Memorial Library. Oh my God, who are they by? Henry Billings. Oh my God, it's more Henry Billings. I can't believe it. Who is this guy? So anyway, I did a little investigating, prompted by the little blurb in the Rhinebeck Post Office mural book, where Olendow says, especially Henry Billings, he's followed the mural's development, repeatedly given invaluable suggestions and criticism. Turns out he was a WPA artist. The only murals he has to his name in Dutchess County are the little corner ones that are in the Wappingers Library, but they're sweet, you know, they're there. The big thing where he was famous was he made the world's first 3-dimensional mural at the Ford Pavilion in the 1939 World's Fair, which is what I have a picture of. So he bought a house in Milan in 1933, I think, so it would have been a time he lived on, at one point this was a video that played. Oh, it might.
Before Henry Ford's first gasoline engine, and marvel at the huge mobile mural by Henry Billings, the first moving mural in the world, symbolizing the dependence of industry upon pure science. From 10 in the morning until 10.
So, I thought it was pretty good. So Billings was kind of, after his, you know, he kind of did a couple of little traditional murals. I guess that didn't excite him too much. He was driven by this integration of science and art. And so after that, he wrote a book called Diesel Electric 4030. You can imagine how riveting that is. But he did all the illustrations. The illustrations were what was interesting. Which brings me to the book that I was given just a couple weeks ago called Construction Ahead. It's all about Route 199 in this period of the 1950s. And it's interesting because it shows you the things that they get excited about and how they idealize it. If you are at the Rao Church heading west, you barely notice it these days, but you actually go through an area that's cut through. Well, that was a big deal in the 50s. And there's a beautiful picture of them setting up the dynamite at the top. And then in this map, you can see on the right, they call it the Big Cut. They were very proud of this. Even the book cover, that portion on the left, is the big gouge out of the Big Cut. And remember our 1910 road to be improved? Well, it had that nasty little kink in it, which Henry Billings called a blind corner. So it's now the 1950s. We don't have to put up with blind corners anymore. We can blast right through it and have a new improved Route 199. So that whole road, this finally solves the problem in a big way of Asa Potter looking east and seeing the roads go instead of straight. So anyway, they're very proud of this. I loved the drawings of his drawings are really, they're a very certain style. I thought, well, how does Henry Billings' idealization of the Big Cut compare to today? So I took some things from Google. I think you'll agree. It's somehow it doesn't maybe live up to what they were hoping for. But anyway, you can kind of see what they were going after, that these things would all be connected. So I'm about to wrap up. And I just wanted to summarize by looking back at the map itself and thinking of Asa Potter, thinking about, ooh, there's all that iron ore. How do I get the traffic past my hotel? And it may seem like a leap, but it made me think like, oh, the 6 lanes, the suspension bridge into downtown Rhinebeck. Then it reminded me that in the 80s there was a plan to put a nuclear power plant in Upper Red Hook, right? Con Edison bought 900 acres. And I started to think, imagine if we had the bridge into Rhinebeck, the 6-lane highway. We already have the power lines, and we had the nuclear power plant. How different we would look and feel. We'd feel a lot like just go across the river. So anyway, I guess I kind of ended on that idea that there are all these forces driving decisions, and thank goodness we've had people here who kind of shaped them to go in the direction that they do, and that's my presentation. Just one quick thing. I said I'd talk about, and then I'll take your question. I said I'd talk about where we're going with maps. This is where I was going to work with Phineas, and my bit was only going to say that God bless the blue signs that were written in 1935. But we're quickly moving to something where in your hand you can have history read to you. I looked at this Next Exit History app. I'm not convinced it's the best thing. In Milan, we're creating a Google map with the 1802 Salisbury Turnpike embedded in it. You can go in and choose whether you want to see historic homes, churches, hamlets, post offices. And on the card that I gave you, MilanNYHistory.org, there's something, it's /portfolio maps. That's where all this stuff is. So I was going to just quickly direct you to that and point out that this Sunday at 3 at the historic Red Hook, Greta Trich-Roman is going to review her projects that her students are doing with historic Red Hook on integrating the 1797 Rhinebeck map into contemporary maps. And so her approach is very different. What I'm trying to do with Google is make something very accessible, but you risk it because you put it out there and it's Google. She's doing something that's highly sophisticated and rich, but a little more closed, and there's a role for both. So, and then Phineas was going to do his thing. Now I'm really done. Anyway, sorry.
Thank you, Bill. Actually, before we have questions, John, I had forgotten when I was doing the introduction, John had wanted to add something, and even though we wanted to do it beforehand, John, if you want to share your comment?
Yeah, I've been fascinated with, well, I share the enthusiasm with the young man here about these routes, and I tried a long time to find someone who could cover the, I guess, rumor that there was a path basically Philadelphia, Port Jervis, Rondout, Rhinebeck, Milan, Salisbury, and Boston. So you say that might have been proposed, but it never happened.
I've heard these things discussed as, it's funny, you know, the way Eisenhower talked about an interstate highway system in the 1950s, there were glimmerings of that in 1802, but that was an ambition that was bigger than they could deliver. But they did, I mean, they did have these extraordinary ideas that they would all connect, but it would be canals, turnpikes, plank roads. It just didn't quite happen. It had to wait about 150 years.
Well, so I'm glad that you took on this amazing research to show us. This is amazing.
It did, thank you. And it did start with Brad Kendall and that amazing map. So when that map is restored, we'll let you know how to see it.
Other questions, comments? Yes, Mr. Clark.
Is that Salisbury Turnpike a toll road or not?
We were talking about that earlier because the theory is it should have been, but I haven't been able to find any references to actual toll houses. I've heard things described as it not functioning and the gates are open, but I've never been able to figure out where there were gatehouses, if there ever were gatehouses.
Yeah, there's a picture.
Bill, at the site of the Rhinebeck Garage, on the west side of the Rhinebeck Hill, was a toll house. And, I can't give you the reference where it was talked about, but
So where is that, the Rhinebeck Garage being,
as you go on Bruce Road, Rhinecliff Road,
yeah.
downhill, you'll cross the Rhinebeck Hill.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
just on the other side
Oh,
of
so
that
was it-
is the town garage.
Did you hear that right? So that was at least at this end, yeah. Oh, okay,
So
that's,
there was a toll house there, and there was a person who was designated as a toll keeper, gatekeeper.
so that's good to know. Well, that's something I'd like to learn more about, but I suspect, when you look, I've looked at censuses too, and you see who has the money. It's either the Livingstons or the people who have the ferries and things.
It's a very short time period, I think.
Yep.
So I've long been curious why you go out 308, instead of going up Salisbury Turnpike, you wouldn't go on out through Rock City on much leveler ground than up and over Salisbury Turnpike.
Oh, you mean, why did they do that in the first?
Yeah, I mean, I probably don't have the answer for that, but it just struck me as amazing that they would make those horses pull those hills up and over.
I know it. So I was trying to think, well, was there someone in that particular path who had a real financial interest, but not necessarily? The only thing, I did think about that, and one of the things I wondered is, if people start meandering up toward Red Hook, then they have the option of going to Red Hook, and
Right.
this would not give them that.
Yeah.
Not give, so I wondered if it was maybe that you risk people going to Red Hook if you
Right.
start sending them up. But
Right.
it didn't work out too well.
You had a question, second row? No?
Me, Beverly.
Beverly,
Who drew the original map? Does anybody know?
That's a good question. It might be on the, I don't know if it's on the map itself. That's a good question. Oh, and I guess, Nancy, you pointed, there's a similar map in Albany. It's like similar and different, right? It's,
The map in Albany is taking the miles from the river to go to Salisbury. It's just the opposite.
In like numbers and.
Yes. And then there's this map that shows two alternative routes for the turnpike. One is going the way it did go, and the other is continuing on 308. And if you continue on 308, you pass Morris Inn, which is at our farm. And because the turnpike bypassed it, it gave up.
oh, so Morris's Inn is your farm? Because I see Morris's Inn is very clear on the
It's
1797
actually on
map.
Patton Road,
Hmm. Oh, interesting.
right there.
Don?
I'm very interested in the connection between Rhinebeck or Rhinecliff and
So Mr. Radcliffe had it.
Rondout. And
Oh.
before that
Yeah.
is Kipsbury.
there's a Lucas Turnpike that starts in Kingston and runs south, which was part, the subject of my master's thesis was
Oh.
a study of the route from Esopus, which is now Kingston,
Yeah,
to Minnesink, which was an Indian area down near, just south of the
Delaware.
Delaware River, and that connection, which is now pretty much Route 209.
What was known as Old Mine Road.
Yeah, and yeah, the subject was, what I was testing was that legend of the Old Mine Road, which is a very difficult subject.
Yeah,
I had to do a lot of traveling
yeah.
to eke out information. But it's, that connection between, cross-river connection is really important.
Mm.
Between Rhinebeck and Kingston, as Esopus. And because that road was used for travel in colonial times. It was an Indian trail that became a road.
I know.
But the mines, traditionally the mines were down just north of the Delaware Water Gap at Pop Quarry. But what I found was the mine that really gave the road its name was down in Napanock.
Oh,
It was
really?
a lead mine.
Oh, oh.
Yes,
Yeah,
from what
yeah,
I
yeah.
could glean. Yeah, so, but the tradition through that, the mine had been, the road had been constructed in the 17th century, mid-17th century by
Wow.
Dutch miners.
Wow.
And it's a very strong tradition, very strong legend that's still believed, but that really wasn't the, but that whole connection from New England
I see.
to,
Yeah.
down to the south to New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and eventually Philadelphia was really important back in the colonial times.
I see. I see.
For inland route.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? If not, thank you very much, Bill.
It was fun. Thanks.
And appreciate having you. And there are refreshments and
Good.
heaps of